Okay, I'm back on again. I'm just going to invite Jim there now and see Jim Conway. Right, Jim, I'm just inviting you now. And hopefully you'll, if you answer the invite, you'll be on. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. It's so annoying. Thanks for all the hearts. Nadia's back. Thank you for coming back, Paula. Hi, Paula. Give you a little wave there, Paula. So, Jim, I've sent you an invite. If you can see it, you just have to accept it. So we just wait. But anyway, as I was saying, when I was a child, I grew up with Anya and the Grangestone Circle down in Limerick. So I had a connection with the Fae. And always in the morning time I was always up early as a child. Philomena, thanks for coming back. Oh, Jim, you can't see it. One sec. And Conway approve, and I'm going to add you, Jim, but I'd say it's your broadband. I'd say it's your broadband connection. It's just not connecting into me. You can't see the invitation. I don't know. Might you try on your computer, I wonder, Jimmy? Maybe it might be better, and you might see it that way. But in near Anya, and so Anya was very important to me as a child. And then, of course, I left home and I went off and did other things. And then Anya came back into my life, I would say about in 2008, came back into my life. I decided to go out to the Stone Circle one day, and no, it was summer solstice actually. I decided to go out, and there was a photographer there actually, and he was photographing everyone. And around me there was orbs, all around me, and I'd never heard of them, and absolutely had not heard of orbs or seen, or well, I could see orbs, but I never thought that. Sorry, now I'm just trying to get Jim in. So I'm approving you, Jim, and I'm trying to add you, but every time it says it's adding you, you're trying to connect. It seems to be not connecting, Jim. I wonder if you try. Jim, yeah, Paul, I'm having trouble with Jim connecting into the thing. It could be his broadband. So it's very disappointing. I'm just wondering that if Jim maybe used his computer instead of his phone, maybe he might come on. I don't know. But I'll continue with my story while we're trying to get Jim in. I'm just going to see, can I just try and invite him again? Yeah, I have invited you, Jim, and I don't know why you can't see it. So, but anyway, I'll continue the story about Anya. Paula and Jim are watching with me. Oh, okay. The Anya, I went out to summer solstice anyway in 2008, and there was this photographer taking photographs of me, and there was orbs all around me. Now, I was well on my spiritual path at this stage anyway, so I was quite interested to know what that was. So I contacted this lady in America, and she was telling me about orbs, and I learned quite a bit about it. So I started to experiment with the orbs out at the Grangestone Circle. So and I'm a Reiki master as well, so I decided to try and experiment with them. And hi, Magella, thanks for back watching. And photographing them myself. And I realized that if I put out an intention, they used to kind of send me When I answer, sorry, Jim is telling me when I answered, it ends. I'd say it's your connection, Jim. Your broadband connection isn't strong enough to connect to me. I would say that. Do you want to try your computer, Jim? Maybe it might be better. That's all I can think of, Jim, because I have invited you, but you're not seeing it, and I don't know why. We might have to rearrange this. You know, we'll rearrange it for another night, and maybe we'll do a group chat. Maybe it might be better. Oh, Paul, I don't know about that. I think we'll rearrange it, Jim, if you don't mind. I think it's because your connection isn't strong enough to connect into me. So I'll talk to you tomorrow, and we'll rearrange that, because I don't have Facebook on my computer. Okay. I'll try it one more time. You're requesting me there now again, and I'm approving it and I'm adding you, but when it's adding you, it's just not connecting for some reason. So we'll talk again, Jim. I'll talk to you. Oh, Jim! Don't believe it.
Just as we were about to quit.
Oh, well, Jim has finally arrived.
Yeah. So
if you just put down your Oh, Jim, you're looking great. I love the hat.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm so delighted. That was a bit.
Somebody called me.
Oh, is there? Yeah.
I don't know where to hit decline or answer. It's Margaret. You're calling me on Messenger.
Oh, am I? I think the Fae are having a fun with us.
I think so. So let's see. I'm afraid if I had an answer here,
it'll stop ringing. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah. I can hear you. If you just put your phone down a little bit so we can see your face, Jim, that'd be great. There we go. Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Absolutely. Well, welcome, Jim. I'm delighted.
Thank you. The hat is around Lurgan when I'm doing wee presentations or talks, you know. I'm usually get a wee bit self. Wear funny hats to take people's attention away from a face and concentrate on the hat. And so, as a consequence of that, people now call me Jimmy the Hat. And so, if I don't wear the hat, people say,
right?
"Where's your hat, Jimmy the Hat?"
Paula Snow Queen is after saying, "Well, you're very handsome, Jim."
Thank you. I actually have. I'll show you my Druid's hat. Here's my Druid's hat.
Okay. Hi, Bethany. Welcome. Oh, thank God Jim has arrived. I thought I'd have to carry the whole lot on my own, but anyway, thanks. Oh my God, I love it.
This is the one they use for the kids. The kids love this because this is the sunburst here, you know, the wicker sunburst. And the flowers are for the summer. And then we have the feathers here of all the birds. And we have the moss. The moss, we live in a mossy area. And the moss is very special to the Druids because they had a cure in the moss for every ailment. So the people used to go to the Druids to get all their cures, you know, there. So
absolutely.
So this is for teaching the children about the Druids, you know. So yeah.
Well, I admire you for doing that, Jim, because they're so use our heritage or our folklore or our you know, where we came from, our ancestry.
Yeah.
And it's so important that we keep the stories going, you know.
Yes, of course it is. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, oh my God, I'm so delighted you've joined us. So Jim, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining me tonight.
No problem.
Yeah,
you mentioned you mentioned Michael McKiernan earlier.
Sorry.
And you were speaking to Michael McKiernan earlier on. Michael McKiernan actually is one of, you know, the geniuses or the experts in A. Russell are now all in Lurgan and Craigavon, and two of them are the McKiernan brothers, one of the ones you were speaking to, and another boy called Ziggy McAlinton. And Ziggy runs our Facebook page and does quite a bit of the
I see.
Research. So that's the three real sort of experts on it. And this is
Well,
Michael McKiernan wrote, and Brian McKiernan wrote this little book about AE. So
oh
he's one of the
really?
authors. Yeah, he's one of the authors of this book on him that we've produced locally. So
Oh, I
you're,
didn't even
yeah,
know that you had a book produced. So,
yeah,
Jim,
if you
you
could.
might send me that. You might send me
Yeah, yeah.
a link to that where we can get it.
But it's not really for
Um,
sale on the internet or anything. But we sort of accept maybe £5 for towards our organisation, our festival for the wee book. So we
yeah.
don't really charge
Well,
people for it.
I'm sure no one would, no one would argue with like put a price on it, and we'll ask. I know it's a donation maybe to your society, but
Yeah,
we've no problem with paying that. I actually will donate. So, if you can send me a link tomorrow, and I'll put it up on the group that you have this book. Send me a photograph of it, and I can put it up in the group tomorrow.
okay. Well, it's if people come to Lurgan, really, on our wee tours, they can sort of purchase one of the books or give us a donation. That's the kind of things
Yeah,
we would like.
I
So,
know because you're a voluntary organization, I presume. Yeah,
totally, yeah, totally, yeah.
totally
We're just
voluntary. Yeah.
totally voluntary,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, Jim,
Yeah.
can you tell us a bit about George Russell, the boy? I was just before you came on, I was telling them that I
Yeah.
had a connection with the Fae
Well,
as a child, and I
yeah,
know that it affects you for the rest of your life.
yeah.
That when you
Well,
make this connection with the Fae, and it's
well,
not meeting little people or anything like that. It's
no,
just
no, definitely not.
no, it's
No,
not.
he
I
described
mean,
them.
yeah.
Uh,
So
he
if you could
described them as
explain to us, if you could explain to us about George Russell and his childhood and how he
okay,
came to meet the Fae originally. It was in his childhood it happened, didn't it?
that's right. Yes, his family originally came from a place called Sidon in County Meath, and they came to Lurgan anyway. And so his father was a bookkeeper in Lurgan, and when George was born, um, they moved to a little cottage, a beautiful little cottage actually in the grounds. We had landlords in Lurgan who were quite benevolent towards the common people. They were good landlords. I know a lot of problems with landlords, but the Brownlows were by and large nice to the people. And George, he ran about the estates there of the Brownlow family, which is now Lurgan Park, a beautiful park. But the area it was called Docker. It's called the Docker now, but it comes from the Doof Cairn. There was a big black cairn there previously, and a lot of the cairn was used to build, the buildings around Lurgan. So there already was some presence in that area, and a
And it was called Dove Cairn,
Doof Cairn, the dark cairn or the black cairn,
the
you
Dark
know.
Cairn. Wow,
Yeah,
like Dove.
and there was a bog pool there as well. And so anyway, he, as a child, was running about these beautiful grounds of this Brownlow estate. And while he was there, he had what he called waking dreams. And when he was laying, and he was seeing these things that he came from a very, very religious background, and some of it evangelical. And he couldn't sort of reason these things that he was seeing with his Christian religious background. So that's where his
Mm.
mysticism began, and he had visions there, and he also seen the um, the dragonflies in Lurgan Park, and that's where he got the beautiful
Mm.
blue for his paintings, and all his books are blue, and this blue,
Yeah,
and this is why I'm wearing blue today. So blue was
dragonflies are gorgeous. I mean, the
beautiful.
colors, the blues of the dragonfly. Yeah.
Yeah, so
And
that's what he did.
I only realized yesterday that George Russell is an artist as well, and his
Oh,
paintings
brilliant
are
artist,
just
fabulous artist. You know?
unusual.
So we have Van Morrison, who was a great fan of A's, and he had the same. He says he channels his songs, or channeled. He doesn't write them. They're channeled from the mysticism, from the mystic, and Into the Mystic is one of the very famous ones. He channeled them,
Mm.
and when he was interviewed about his mysticism, of course they tried to say to him, I'm sure you got that from Yeats. And he said, no, 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 no. My mystic genealogy comes from A.E. Russell. So them's the kind of, and of course he was a big influence on Gandhi, and Gandhi, AE wrote about pacifism. He was a good pacifist, and Gandhi got his pacifism from there as well, you know. But the interesting thing about AE, of course, and you mentioned this painting there, was in Anne Morocco, who was the biography of Countess Markovich. She writes in that Markovich biography that A.E. Russell's legacy to Ireland is its identity. And this is what A.E. tried to create, a genre of poetry that was totally unique to Ireland, a genre of art that was totally unique to Ireland, and politics as well that was unique to Ireland, and you know, all from his spirituality, because he was in total contact with the spiritual world, the mystical world, and it was him who actually introduced Yeats to. Yeats wasn't. Everybody thinks Yeats was, well, I suppose you could say he was a mystical poet, but he was no mystic. A was the mystic, and it was Yeats that was feeding off A's mysticism. And A introduced Yeats to Angus at Braggy Head there in Dunfanaghy, Angus Og, and that's where a lot of the wanderings of Angus, you know, came from there as well. So Yeats was getting his mysticism from A.E. and, you know, from a childhood when he like he was A.E. was, sorry, I should have said he was born in 1867, which was a very troubled time in Lurgan and in Ireland. You know, there was lots of trouble at that time.
He was born in Meath, you said, and then he
No,
moved up to Lurgan.
his family came from Meath. His grandfather came from Meath. Yeah.
Wow.
His grandfather came from Meath, but his mother came from Lurgan. His mother came from Lurgan too. The grandfather came to Lurgan, and his father married a Lurgan girl, and A was born in Lurgan. His grandmother died in Black 47 in Lurgan on his mother's side. She died during the famine, and that was another one of his great things in life, was to try and stop. You know, Ireland had famines nearly every generation, and A seen the reason for it was economic problems in Ireland, and he was a brilliant economist, brilliant mind, and his other great thing about was to try and, you know, eradicate these constant famines and poverty, and he get rid of the combine man. His family were bookkeepers, accountants, and his father's side and his mother's side were farmers. So he was ideal for the cooperative movement, which was his great achievement in Ireland's cause, you know. Through that cooperative movement, that he could free or unshackle Ireland from, you know, the constraints that England had put on it, you know, and nearly worked, you know, but how, you know, the thing you mentioned there about him, you know, most people have very vaguely heard of him, or he's been sort of covered. And to my shame, I was the same. I had hardly heard of him, but I knew there was a plaque till some sort of writer in the middle of.
Oh yeah.
Williams.
Tell me the story how you came across George.
I'm a great fan of Quiet Man, and so I was traveling through Ireland and search for the sites of the Quiet Man, and we were going close to Cool Park, where the wee railway station from the Quiet Man's not far from Cool Park, and I spotted a sign for Cool Park, and so I went down to Cool Park and parked the wee motorhome up, and the wife, she went for sleep. So I went to the girl in the reception and says, "Look, I'm in a bit of a hurry, but I know you have a tree here with the signatures of some of Ireland's greatest writers on here, you know." And she says, "What do you?" And I says, "Could you tell me where it is?" And she gave me a wee map. And it just struck me at that time, it sort of came to me and it says, "Have you ever heard of a boy called A.E. Russell?" And she looked at me as if at two heads and says, "Of course I have." And I says, "Is his name on the tree?" And she says, "Oh, of course it is." You know, and give me a real sort of look that, you know, you should have known that. And on the tree there was this beautiful, you know, his signature was nearly the biggest. And of course it was in a triangle. You know, he was always into, you know, symbols. You know, he was a great symbolist as well, you know, So his signature's got a triangle around it. So when I came back from the signature tree, the girl on the reception says, "Now, if you want to know about AE, go upstairs." I says, "I'm a bit of a hurry." And she says, "I'm telling you, if you want to know about AE, go upstairs and look for the fan." So when I'm upstairs, there was this fan which Lady Gregory had. I presume everybody knows Lady Gregory. I don't have to explain who she is.
Yes.
She was the main person behind the Irish revival, sort of. Anyway, and on the fan there was A.E. Russell's signature right in the middle of it, and above him was President Roosevelt, and below him was Yeats. You know, so I says, "There's something going on here," you know, and it really was strange, and that whole year became strange, as if A.E. was, you know, like he once said, A.E. once said that he had transmigrated to the soul, his soul to the body of an Indian villager. So he could migrate, right? His soul could anyway. So it seemed that this transmigration was going on, that he was coming back for his 150th anniversary. For everywhere I went that year, I was bumping into stuff about AE. I went up to Donegal and there was stuff about Pat the Cope and how AE had started Pat the Cope Gallagher, the cooperative movement up there. So everywhere I went in Ireland, bumping into this stuff about AE Russell, a man who at that stage I had known very little about. And when I came back home, I did a wee bit of research and found out it was his 150th anniversary. So I'm convinced that he was trying to speak to me, you know, although he didn't want to be, he was famous for not wanting to be famous, you know, but he sort of never got his dues in Irish history. And, you know, the academics.
Yeah, it's very interesting you say that he didn't want to be famous, because, you know, when you have that connection to something, the mystics, you know, it's quite scary to come out and say that, or to even admit that, you know.
Oh yeah, he was. Everybody remarked on how humble of a man he was, you know, and he believed that he was there to make himself, you know, to perfect his life or soul for the next life, and he believed that he would keep coming back till he became, you know, nirvana, the perfection, and he tried to do that for Ireland and all his friends, and all the great poets of Ireland, you know, like Frank O'Connor said that he was the father of 3 generations of Ireland's greatest writers, and that's true when you think about it.
And
like
I'm ashamed to say that I didn't know anything about this poet at all until I found out a few months ago, you know, and
but don't worry about
I
it.
was
There's a lot
absolutely blown away by his poetry, and I know that he's totally connected to mysticism, because I know by the way he writes.
100%. You know,
and as you were saying the other day, you know, I'm no expert in poetry, but you don't have to be an expert on poetry.
No.
Because
if you read his poetry, sorry, go ahead.
Because once you read his poetry, it speaks right into your heart and soul. And when if a weaver of words does that to you, you don't have to understand anything or be a critic of poetry at all. That just speaks deep inside of you. John O'Donoghue had that gift as well, the writer John O'Donoghue. And
some people,
I often think that John O'Donoghue must have been reading, you know, AE poetry as well, because it's written in the same style.
Yeah. He definitely would have been. And Moriarty, the good writer and mystic Moriarty, AE was his man. He just loved AE.
As well, good fan really.
Of AE, you know.
Yeah.
But some of AE's people remark about, you know, AE's poetry. Now, the difference between Yeats and AE was that Yeats would have wrote his poetry a bit like pop song, you know, made it popular. He read it for popular, you know, consumption, and he would have worked out.
They're two different styles, though. Yeats is, but AE would be my favorite, because he's speaking to somewhere deep within me. Whilst Yeats, yes, is beautiful poetry. Don't get me wrong, but AE just has that something that's, you know, of another world. And when you read poetry or writing by someone that's a mystic, like I believe John O'Donoghue was a mystic, it speaks to something deep within inside you and changes you forever, because you go, whoa, that hit me. I've often been reading a John O'Donoghue piece, or even, some of the poetry there by George Russell, and you literally have to put the book down. You go, whoa, that just silenced me. When something silences you and you just you leave it resonate with you, that is a mystic talking to you. The words literally speak to you. It's amazing. He's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, definitely is. And even his name, it was a chance thing, the AE part, that he sent one of his poems off to be printed, and he signed it, I think he signed it Eon, and came back as AE, because his handwriting, couldn't read his handwriting. So, and the Eon light is a force that envelopes AE believed that this Eon light enveloped the world, and the energy, the humans and our souls and all, they're like wee sparks of energy that come off this Eon light that envelops the world, so it has a simultaneously the mortal incantation of the Logos and the representation of the mortal self. So this is the meaning of Eon. So when he went there and researched the meaning of AE itself, he found that it was totally, it was mystical that it had come to him. So that's why he kept that name Eon, AE, as his sort of short name, So, but
I love it.
Yeah, but he was a wonderful mystic, and I think that defined his whole attitude to life, and he was trying to make everything in Ireland perfect. He wanted everybody in Ireland to be perfect and everything, so he was involved in the politics of it.
Ireland is perfect.
I think he would have liked it.
What I mean is, the nature of Ireland is perfect. It's the most beautiful country in the world.
Beautiful, yeah.
And that is what I see every day when I wake up. That's what I see. It's the most beautiful country in the world.
Yeah.
We're so blessed.
Yeah. So
and I think that's what George Russell saw as well, and he was trying, and he saw beyond the physical world that we see, and he saw beyond that into the other world.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. No doubt about that.
And I know,
when him and the young Yeats went to art school together, and they were only teenagers, and he was naturally gifted artist. And Yeats wanted to be an artist, and he wasn't that good at it, And he was a real kind-hearted person, and he realized that Yeats wasn't going to be like his father or his brother. He wasn't going to be an artist. So he said to him, tell you what about the two of us taking up the poetry? And they did. But when they were doing the art, and he was painting, and they had the model there, and everybody was painting the model. He would have painted the model, but standing behind the model or around the model would have been these spirits. And they'd come up, and people would come up and look at it. That's brilliant. But who's all these other people?
Do you think if George Russell lived in the Bronze Age time, the Vicar period, when the two of Donan, were here, that he'd be top bard?
He wouldn't have wanted.
I think he would. I think he would. Or maybe he's one of them incarnated.
Well, he could have been. He was very humble, very, very humble, but he wouldn't. Whereas each one of them famous, he didn't. And there's a wonderful sketch called The Chin Angles. Wherever he lived, each always moved in beside him, because he relied heavily on A all the time. So they were living in Merrion Square, a couple of doors apart, and there's a wonderful A was coming out, and he wanted to talk something over with Yeats, and Yeats wanted to talk something over with A. So the two of them was walking along, and A's looking at the ground, holding his chin in deep thought, and Yeats is coming along, head in the air, this flamboyant, showing off, and the two of them walk past each other. So it's a famous cartoon. And I think that sort of sums them up. Whereas A was and deep thought, intellectual, and whereas Yeats was just flamboyant. He wanted to be famous, which he became. He didn't really want to be famous, but his whole thing was about to improve and to create all these great writers and artists and all from Ireland, total new genre, you know,
Yeah.
and that was in everything. Of course, one of the young writers that came to him was a girl called Pamela Travers.
Oh,
Yeah. So
yes.
Pamela Travers, if you're not aware, was the girl that wrote Mary Poppins,
Mary
and
Poppins.
yeah, Mary
Yes.
Poppins too. When
And herself and A were really, really good friends.
yeah, some people says maybe some people think maybe more than good friends, but I think they just were good friends. You know, he was almost like a sort of monk
Yeah.
at times. You know, he did take the celibacy thing. You know, but he did love women, and he was a great fan
Well,
of women. He was, you know, great fan of women's rights, especially strong women. You know, the civil rights women. He was always
oh, we
defending
did up
them.
to be then.
Oh yeah, yeah, big time. The Peckhursts and you know all those wonderful civil rights, women's rights people were, and you know that's he was very close to Count Markovich, really close. You know people like that. You know
Yeah.
they're all these strong and all those lovely poets, Ali Young and people like that. They were all he mentored all them. He started them all off. You know, so
It's
the
amazing. It's amazing that Travis, you know, the writer that wrote
yeah.
Mary Poppins, um, that's mysticism as well. You know,
Oh
Mary
yeah, yeah.
Poppins. I
Yes,
mean,
well
if
there's
you want to live, yes, if you want to be in, you've got to have this childlike
yeah,
energy, you know, to go into the Fae, to meet the Fae, you have to be a child. You've
yep,
never
that's
to
right.
lose that childlike quality to meet the Fae. I know
Yep,
that,
yeah.
you
So
know. And,
yeah, me Poppins actually are allegorical. There's 7 of them, and they're allegorical stories about her friendship, and they're also
yeah.
full of mysticism. They're all full of mysticism, and if you think of the, you know, artist, the Bert, the chimney, he's chalking on the footpath, and
Mm,
they talk about, excuse me, behind the trees. What's behind the trees in the art? So this is the mystic world they're talking about behind the trees. So
mm.
they jump into this mystic
But I
painting.
mean, even the word supercalifragilisticexpialidocious,
Yeah,
that's actually a real Fae. Um, you know, they're pesky. You know,
yeah,
I always call them pesky.
yeah. So he
They're
takes them.
fun. You know, they like to
Yeah,
have fun with you.
yeah. And there's a beautiful bit in it, and which people miss. You know, I've asked hardly any of them ever recognize this, but you know, when they go on the carousel, that represents, you know, reincarnation, and the horse in the mystic world
Mm.
represents your emotions, and you have to keep the horse under control. So on the carousel, the horses are under control, so that's you control your emotions.
Oh, that's very
Really
interesting
cool.
because in the tarot,
Yeah,
there's you have the chariot card in the tarot, and you have the black and white horse, or sometimes it's a sphinx, you know, and
yeah,
one is black and one is white. And the person on the chariot is guiding the chariot without even a reins. So he has mastered the yin
yeah,
and the yang
yeah, yeah.
without
That's right.
even holding a rein. So he can actually guide the chariot
Yeah.
with the will of his own mastery. He doesn't need a reins.
So
So there's
the next scene is even more interesting because the horses, you know, it's the red coats on the horses chasing the fox.
oh,
Okay, and what this is the bit that most people miss. The fox is actually Irish. In fact, he's over Irish. He's Irish, really extreme
the
Irish.
fox.
The fox. So they're chasing this fox, which is Irish, and who comes to the aid of the fox and saves it? But Bert. And Bert, of course, is based on
I
A.E.
used to
Russell.
play with the foxes when I was a kid.
Oh, if you think of was it Swift? No, it was who said it was the unthinkable chasing the uneatable. Um, so this is the same sort of story where they're saying these terrible redcoats are chasing this poor, beautiful piece of nature and trying to hunt it down and kill it.
Mm,
So Bert saves it from these people killing. Of course, he was a famous vegetarian anyway, you know, really was. And he had all
He was
those people.
vegetarian, was he?
Oh, big time, really big time
Really?
vegetarian. Oh yeah, yeah. He had all those. He had all.
Oh,
He had all those wonderful poets and all at that time in vegetarian
oh,
restaurant in Mary. I think it was St Stephen's Green. And Joyce
wow.
remarked. Joyce remarks about
He was
yeah,
really ahead of his time, wasn't
well,
he?
everything. And Joyce, of course,
Oh,
remarks about having these mystical dreams, vegetarian mystical dreams. So of course in Joyce's Ulysses, um, he writes A-E-I-O-U in Ulysses, and that relates to
yeah.
the fact that Joyce camped outside A.E.'s house just to meet him because he'd heard about this wonderful poet, and he wanted it, and he knew that he was encouraging all these young writers anyway. So Joyce eventually gets to meet him,
And
and
that,
he
you know
was
what? That is what people like him do. They encourage,
yeah.
they see the potential in someone else. They can see right into your soul.
Oh yeah.
And yeah,
So
and he could see the potential in people, and I'm just not surprised that he did
yeah.
encourage other young writers.
So he
Yeah.
says to Joyce, he tells Joyce wants to be a poet, and he says, "No, you're not going to make us a poet." He says, "Tell you what you do." He says, "You write me 3 short stories. I'll pay you for them now, and I'll publish them for you." And he did. So not only did he start him writing short stories, but he was Joyce's first publisher, and that was the Dubliners, and that started Joyce off. And Joyce never forgot that, and that's why he wrote in Ulysses,
Yeah.
A-E-I-O-U, because he was the man that gave him the break.
Oh,
You know,
that was
so
nice.
so
Yeah.
you have Joyce and you have Yeats, but even more, you have Patrick Kavanagh. Now, Patrick Kavanagh, he called him the Great Druid, and he went on a pilgrimage from his house to meet A.E., and he walked the whole way just to meet this. And this, how famous A.E. was when he was alive, he didn't ask for A.E. He just kept, when he got to Dublin, he says, "Could you tell me where the poet lives?" Because A.E. spent most of his time in Ireland. The rest, like Yeats and these people had spent most of their time in England, whereas A never or rarely left. He rarely left Ireland. The only time he left Ireland really was to go on his tours of America, the talking tours to the different universities and all that. So if you
Yeah.
think of it, and you can see the mysticism in Kavanagh's work as well, and you can see the
Mm.
influence of A.E. on it, and A.E. actually taught
Wow.
Kavanagh how to write poetry, So,
Yeah. And it's
I mean,
so sad that he's not honored, as a great person, just for being
well,
such an amazing
I
person.
think,
Not only a
yeah,
poet and artist, but just to be like the influence that he had on the Irish poetry and poets. It's
yeah. Well,
unbelievable. I can't believe it.
I think it's a bit like the phoenix. He's starting to rise, and I think he will be realised in time as probably Ireland's greatest ever person. Really, when you think about all the stuff he
Yeah,
did,
well, I think,
you know,
yeah, well,
um,
he should be honored. He should be
oh,
honored.
he will be,
Have you
and
have you
so
have you have you ever approached the president? President Higgins, because I mean he's a
yeah,
great man of the arts and poetry in Ireland, and
yeah.
he loves all that. I mean he's a great writer himself and a great orator. Have you ever
Well,
approached him to
yeah. Well,
maybe
we've
honor him?
invited him down, and of course, the president's from the Labour Party, and the emblem of the Labour Party is the Starry Plough flag. And if you think of, AE created the Story Plough flag during the 1913 lockout. He was pivotal in the 1913 lockout. He was sticking up for the poor as well. He was a
Yeah.
good man for that. And if you think of the imagery of the Story Plough,
Mm.
another great
Just for
writer,
his poetry, Jim, I'm going on about. I'm just to honor him as a poet.
was a poet, yes,
To
yes,
have an honor made for him, or dedicated
yeah,
to him.
yeah. Well,
Would be nice, wouldn't it?
yeah, he needs a whole lot. But one of the writers called him Ireland's North Star. So if you think of, everything, all the rest of the stars pivot around, you know, the North Star. It never moves. All the rest of the stars move, but the North Star never moves. And he's always there. and he's a great influence on the rest of the stars. So I think that's
Yeah.
a beautiful,
Well,
somebody could write a
in
poem.
astrology, that's where we're meant to be heading, is towards your North Star. That's your
Yeah,
destiny.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, that's
There you
what one
go.
of the other great writers call
Yeah.
him the North Star. And of course, the starry plough points to the North Star. The two of the stars from the starry plough point towards the North Star. So,
Yeah.
um, so we're working very hard to try and bring back this memory, and a lot of things.
So, Jim, when was the society? When did you form the society? The festival society. When did that start?
2016,
When?
2016, and we've had
16. Okay. Yeah.
2016. So we've had some, great festivals so far, and
Mm.
this year we had well under plans for the festival, and then of course the COVID thing came and it knocked it on the
Yeah.
head. So we're
But
slightly
you did it.
bankrupt
But
at the minute.
I saw all your photographs on his. Was it his birthday or his anniversary of his death? Was it his
I
anniversary
like
of
to
his
do it on
death?
his birthday, so
Yeah, you did great
yeah.
stuff on the page. I was watching it. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the PJ,
Jim, you said you were going to read one of his poems. You were going
yes,
to
well,
read one of his poems.
yeah, well,
Would you like to read it now?
right. Well, I was trying to look for some, some of his poems, and Michael loves the poem Caramore. It's a beautiful, beautiful poem, Caramore.
I'm actually going to, yeah, I'm going to get it out because I was looking at it. I was looking at it tonight before I came on the live, and I
Yeah.
said, I love that poem by him. And of
Right.
course,
Well, then,
Caramore is beautiful.
right. Well, you read, right, and then
Oh, do
I
you
will
want me
read.
to read it?
Yeah. I think I'll read. You read if you read Caramore, then I'll read Unity. Maybe I'll read Unity after that. Will I?
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just find it now. Because I didn't mark it out because I thought that was the one you were going to. I'll have to find
Okay.
it, Jim.
If you want, I'll read it, but I thought it might have been nicer from you because I'm not that good at reading.
I don't know where it is now because I didn't mark it.
Do you want me to do it?
You start off.
Okay. It's a lonely road through bogland, and a sleeper there lies dreaming where the water laps the shore. The moth wings of the twilight in the purples are unfurled, yet his sleep is filled with music by the masters of the world. There's a hand is white as silver that is fondling with his hair. There are glimmering feet of sunshine that are dancing by him there, and half open lips of fairy that were dyed a furry red, in their revels where the hazel tree its holy clusters shed. Come away, the red-lipped whisper, all the world is weary now. 'Tis the twilight of the ages, and it's time to quit the plough. Oh, the very sunlight, a wearier it lightens up the dew. Is changed and faded before it falls to you. Sorry. Though your calling's heart is tender, a tenderer heart is near. What's the starlight in her glances when the stars are shining clear? Who would kiss the fading shadow when the flower face glows above? 'Tis the beauty of all beauty that is calling for your. Oh, the great gates of the mountain have opened once again, and the sound of the song and dancing falls upon the ears of men, and the land of youth lies gleaming, flushed with rainbow light and mirth, and the old enchantment lingers in the honey heart of earth.
Wow. Isn't that beautiful?
Beautiful, and it's timeless, and to say that Yeats's poems are better than that, they might be his equal to it.
They're just two different styles, and the thing is just two different styles. And the thing is about AE is that he was the mystic, and he's always that. So his writing is going to be totally different to Yeats.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No,
A
it's
lot
going
of
to be
his
just
poems
different.
are sort of like his.
The one I want to read is, and it's very close to my heart, is The Morning Star.
Oh,
Um,
beautiful. Yeah.
and the reason the reason I want to read this, Jim, is because in Bruff, where I was born, the river there is the Morning Star, which is referring to Venus.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, you know, I often think that Anya is connected to Venus, you know, the
Oh,
goddess
I would
Anya.
say so, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know, did you know that? But the river in Bruff, which is
Yeah.
near Knockany and near the Granestone Circle, is called the Morning Star. So when I saw that he had written a poem about the Morning Star, I said, "Oh my God, I love this
Mhm.
man." So this is the one I've chosen. So I'll read it now. So the Morning Star, George William Russell. In the black in the black pool of the midnight, Luig had slung the morning star, and its foam in rippling silver whitens into day. Falling on the mountain rampart, piled with pearl above our glen, only you and I, beloved, moving into the fields of men. In the dark tarn of my spirit, love, the morning star is lit, and its halo ever brightening lightens on in it. Love, a pearl grey dawn in darkness, breathing peace without desire. But I fain would shun the burning terrors of the midday fire. And of course, he's talking about the sun there, I think. Through the faint and tender airs of twilight, on star may gaze, but the eyes of light are blinded in the white flame of the days. From the heat that melts together, oft a rarer essence slips, and our hearts may still be parted in the meeting of the lips. What a darkness would I gaze on when the day is, if my eyes were dazed and blinded by the whiteness of a breast. Never through the diamond darkness could I hope to see afar, where beyond the pearly rampart burning the pure evening star. Oh,
Beautiful.
and it's
Oh, lovely.
unbelievable, like, isn't it? I
Amazing.
mean, he was able to, he deeply about nature and the other world.
Yeah.
Like he had the deep knowledge of it, which is like
Well, yeah.
really
You know,
amazing.
I remember my aunties and my, people talk about the fairies or the she or the fae, whatever you want to call them. And like,
Mm.
I remember my granny and my aunties, and there was no question. They knew them. It wasn't, do you believe in them? They just knew them. They were real. And he was the
Well,
same, you know.
I was the same growing up with my father in that we never really spoke about them, but we knew they were there, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
And he, like we knew they were there,
yeah.
so we never spoke about them. It was normal for us,
It was normal for
completely.
me growing
Yeah.
up in Lurgan, just outside Lurgan here, and with my granny and them, and my aunties, who lived quite a long time into my life. Right up till they died, it was a total. It wasn't a belief in them. They knew they were there. If you know what I mean,
Yeah.
they were there. They were
I
just
mean,
part of life.
I remember when my father, he'd be coming up to saving the hay, you know, and he'd be looking up at the sky like that and talking to the sky and everything. And I used to be wondering who he was talking to, you know,
Yeah, it's
because
great.
he'd say, "Oh, Margaret," he'd look down at me and say, "Oh, Margaret, do you know what? That's it now. We'll be saving the hay tomorrow. That sky is telling me." And I often used to look up and say, "I wonder who's up there that he's talking to."
Yeah, yeah,
So it was all that type of that's the way, like that's the way we were, you know
yeah.
what I mean? Because
I,
naturally my father would know about nature, and he to save the hay. He'd know by the night sky the night before, you know.
but
So I
that's
think
one of
it's
the
this
things.
connection to nature that it's the connection to nature that you have that you grow up with.
One of the things that people find hard to rationalize about AE is this was one of the greatest intellectuals that Ireland ever had. You know, he was Ireland's what do you call him? You know, he was one of the greatest intellectuals. But these people can understand that this man was such a great intellectual that he believed in these fairies. You know, and they called him the hairy fairy because of this here. You know, they made fun of him and all of that there, but they just didn't realize that he knew them.
That's so sad.
You know, he knew these, but he was a wonderful intellectual. Great, I would say probably one of the greatest intellectuals Ireland ever had. But
Absolutely.
because he had this belief in another world, in the mystic world, that people would have sometimes made fun of him over it, you know. But a great man, wonderful man. And I think,
absolutely.
As I said, he's like a phoenix, and he's going to rise, you know. And people are starting to
You
come
said
to him.
that to me yesterday when we were chatting, that someone said that he's going to rise.
Oh, he big time. He's starting to rise, and a lot of people are coming to him through different. You know, some people are coming to him through his art. Some people are coming to him through his poetry. Some people are coming to him through his mysticism. You know, and others are actually coming to him through his economics. You know, the great work he done internationally. Like, he was renowned internationally when he was alive. You know, so
yes.
A lot of
he had a great he also had a great association with the Dublin and the arts, didn't he? With the museums and that, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, he would have been behind most things in Dublin at the time. You know, everybody come to him. You know, if anybody wanted to know about anything, they came to AE, and a lot of people came to him for to set up. You know, the bank behind. You know, get the bank accounts to set up all the different organisations. You know, England, the Hearn, the women's. What was the women's? Trying to think of the women's organisation. But all those different, you know, would have been coming to him to set up all those organisations. You know. And you know, even when James Conway was being executed, you know, he entrusted his family to Leigh because he knew they'd be looked after. You know, and he raised lots of money to send the family. I think they were going to America or somewhere, send them over to America. You know, and stuff like that. You know, and he was a wonderful man, and he actually raised something like £30,000 for the Irish language and the Irish colleges at the time. You know, the very first Irish colleges in Ireland. He was the man behind raising funds for that there, you know. So, but
and it's so important that we, you know, keep our Irish language, because it's got such an amazing, that the Irish language is amazing because it's very poetic and romantic and lilting.
Yeah,
and it's a beautiful language, and it's a language that describes things beautifully, better than English, if you know what I mean.
yeah.
It has a melody and a lyric to it and a flow, you know, and
it's a poetic language.
And when you read George Russell and John O'Donoghue, they are writing in the Irish style, because it's so romantic and flowing, and you know, it's beautiful. The Irish language is beautiful.
Yeah. So I'll do this wee poem here, which is called Unity, and
yes.
So I'll read out Unity. I'll just, as I said, I'm not a good reader myself, so but I'll try my best at it.
You did a fine job of the last one. I enjoyed it.
Okay, so Unity. One thing in all things I have seen, one thought has haunted earth and air. Clangor and silence both have been in palaces, chambers, everywhere. I saw the mystic vision and lived in men and woods and streams until I could no longer know the dream of life from my own dreams. Sometimes it rose like fire in me within the depths of my own mind, and spreading to infinity. It took the voices of the wind, it scrawled the human mystery, dim heraldry on light and air, wavering along the starry sea. I saw the flying vision there. Each fire that in God's temple lit burns fierce before the inner shrine, dimmed as my fire grew near to it, and darkened at the light of mine. At last, the meaning caught the spurred words Deanum, it shakes, it stakes its wondrous plumes of thought and trails the stars along with them. So that's it. And the poem was originally titled The Secret. And when it was first published in the Irish Theosophist, it was in April '94. And it was A's first poetry anthology. Homeward Songs, by the way. And Allington, in his biography, refers to this poem when he compares A.E. to Emerson and to Blake, who are wonderful mystics as well. Like, I'm sure that people know about Blake. And I saw the mystic vision flow and live in men and woods and streams. Beautiful language, like beautiful language.
Oh, yeah.
And that line, Harry was seeing and feeling the spiritual world all around him.
That reminds me of when I was a child. I was always like, I was never in. I was always down the fields.
Yeah.
Roaming, bare feet, roaming through the rivers and the streams and the double ditches and climbing trees. And I literally ate on the hedgerows. And I didn't know whether I could eat it or not, but I just knew, oh, I'll eat this. No, I can't eat that. And I would eat off the hedgerows. Honestly. I think I was the first wild child in Ireland.
Yeah. So Allington was one of his biographers, and Allington supports the contention that A.E. is a poet with an immense spiritual claim and awareness. Going further than this, he contends, and this is what he says: the man who uses such language is in danger, but in Russell there were resources of character and talent which were to ensure his safety. So he said, he was really saying there that he was a genuine mystic. And he could write about the mysticism because he knew what he was talking about.
Exactly. He had to be a mystic to write the way he did.
Yeah. And he was never in danger.
What I meant to you. That's what I meant when I said to you about there's no need to be know anything about poetry.
Yeah.
When people like this write, and they touch something within you that's so deep.
Okay. Yeah.
That is magic. That is magic. That's the magic.
Yeah. And nobody could ever contradict him because he was genuine.
Because it's the truth. Because it's the truth. You know what I mean? If you go out into nature and you experience nature like that, you know, and then you read his poetry. Oh, I have a friend.
Yeah,
I have a friend who can put into words what I feel inside. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
I have someone that could put into words what I feel inside. Exactly.
Yeah. And the poem ends with A declaring that there is a spiritual unity of all the otherworldly manifestations that go unnoticed by most people.
Yeah.
Like a secret that has to be discovered.
It is a secret.
Yeah, it's a secret. The spirit wears it diadem, so that's what he was saying there. So
that's why the Fae are so pesky. They're always hiding on you.
Yeah. And that's why, but your group now knows the secret, and that's what I say. And maybe Poppins would say it's behind the trees. Look beyond the trees, behind the trees. That's what the secret is.
That's where the fairies hide.
Yeah, that's what the mystic world is in there. And that it was A's idea really for a lot of maybe Poppins, and it was his idea for the English nanny and to make her into what some people would call a witch. I wouldn't call her a witch, but a spiritual, mystical lady. And that's where that's where the whole idea came from. And A's. This is a funny one now. A's nickname was the Matchman because when he was painting, or he was always holding, a council there. People came to him to hear him talking all the time, and he was supposed to be smoking a pipe. But he often forgot about the pipe and he put it in his pocket. And of course, his pocket would have, went on fire, things like that. But he was lighting matches all the time. The pipe was going out, and there's always a trail of matches behind him. So they nicknamed him the Matchman. A lot of the servants and people in Glenveigh, they called him the Matchman, and that stuck with him. And Mary Poppins' first. Not book now, but a first article, Pamela Travers' first article was called Mary Poppins and the Matchman. And Mary Poppins Mary Poppins falls in love with the matchman in her first article. So that's why
Well,
some
I'd say
people
she
say.
was. I'd say she was really, you
Yeah.
know.
But the
Yeah.
strange thing about the
I'm in
strange
love
thing
with
about
him, and I didn't. I mean, I'm in love with him, and I.
look, everybody, that's everybody. When he was alive, everybody was in love with him. It just the whole of Dublin and all the, as I say, a lot of people had these
I'd love to
sort of
meet him.
things
I'd say he
about
was
age.
amazing.
Hmm?
He would have been amazing to spend time in his company, I'd say. Would have
Well,
been
they
incredible.
talked about his blue, dreamy blue eyes. You know, he had beautiful eyes, and they talked about this
Mm.
beautiful accent. Now, I'm not sure what his accent was. Was it a Lurgan accent or what kind of accent it was? But I will tell you, I spoke there about my granny and my two aunties, and their accent was a lot different than mine because I think we've brought on a wee bit of a Belfast accent into Lurgan now. You know, so it's just not
Okay.
as, you know, my granny's accent was more like a country accent, if you want to call it that. You know, some people maybe called it culty accent, or we call them around here the munchies. The munchies is the area where the
All
bog
right.
was. You know,
Well, we have that down here as well. Cult, you know, you're
yeah,
culty if you're from the country, you know.
yeah. So
So I'm a
I
culty.
suspect, yeah, well, I suspect his accent was probably a bit more culty accent, munchy accent, but then it might have had a tinge of Dublin in it. I'm not sure, but anyway,
Right.
people remarked how beautiful his accent was, and he was a big, large man, you know, and his accent was
Yeah.
very, his voice was quiet, he was quietly spoken,
Mm.
and in fact, when he was over in the Albert Hall, the Royal Albert Hall in London, campaigning for the workers in the 1913 lockout, along with George Bernard Shaw and people like that, and the
Mm.
people couldn't because he was too softly spoken, you know,
Uh,
so
uh.
so that
Well,
was him.
he left us a brilliant legacy in his poetry and art anyway, Jim.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
look, it was absolutely incredible speaking to you tonight.
yeah,
And have another talk again maybe about him,
yeah.
hopefully in the
Oh, yeah,
future.
yeah.
And I know you've invited me up to Lurgan, and I'm coming up to Lurgan. I want to
Oh, you have to
see.
come to Lurgan. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Come
definitely.
up and we'll
I've
give you
never
a
been,
tour.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
I'd love it.
amazing. You know, now I know it's been on the news recently there for all the wrong reasons, but Lurgan people, you know, they're very friendly.
Not
But
sure.
the
I
only thing
never
about
watch
them is,
news. Look, I believe in meeting the people, and do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I believe in meeting the people, and w- people are nice wherever you go. That's what
yeah.
I've always found that, you
Well,
know.
we're in the process of opening an A. Russell Centre, and hopefully
Yes,
we'll have that open and we'll have an exhibition on. Like one of the great things we
lovely.
did, one of the great things we did was we put on an exhibition in one of the biggest shopping centres in Northern Ireland, the Craigavon Shopping Centre there. I can't remember the right name, but anyway, and there was thousands of people come to see the exhibition, and they thought this was absolutely fabulous that we had brought
Yeah.
art into the middle of a shopping centre, you know. So
Well, I have a friend actually, Kathy Tiernan in Limerick, and they put their art up on the People's Park railings today.
oh right, yeah,
Yeah,
good idea,
up on the
yeah.
railings of the People's Park in Limerick.
Mm.
So you can put your art anywhere. You know, it doesn't matter where you put art.
Oh yeah. Well, we can take our exhibition.
Actually, actually, some of the best musicians are buskers on the streets.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, I love the boxers
You
myself.
know,
Uh,
so yeah.
so
And
we would like.
the Irish always used to dance at the crossroads.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. So we would love to put the exhibition actually on in a big shopping centre at some time. You know, that would be, you know,
Yeah,
because
that'd be amazing.
he spent most
That'd
of
be
his
amazing.
adult life there, so it'd be nice, you know, for people to see. Oh, by the way, you might be interested. This is beautiful. Now, it's only a print, although it's on canvas. One of his, which I think is fantastic.
Oh
Images.
yeah, that painting is beautiful.
Mm.
Where can you get those prints, Jim?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you can purchase them anywhere. We had special permission from Lissadale House, believe it or not, to reproduce Some, and they never charged us. But when the ones
Okay.
from Armagh Museum, they charged us, you know, and like we you know, we are trying to promote this man, and but anyway, we'll not go into all that. So
Okay,
there's
Jim, listen, it was brilliant speaking to you.
yeah, I wanted to show you a few wee things before you went. This is called
Yeah.
A Midsummer's Eve. Now it's probably back to front, but it's a signed first edition, Midsummer's Eve. Can you see that?
Yes, yes.
And it was a limited edition. And my son bought me that for Christmas, I think it was. So that's
Oh,
that one.
lovely.
And it's a beautiful poem. So it is, or poems. Is it back to front?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
But I
so
can read it anyway.
that's one of his books. This other one is called Voices of the Stones. Voices of the Stones. And
I
there's a
don't
poem,
know.
there's a poem in it called Earth. And in the first edition of Voices of the Stones, which this is, the poem is not printed, but it's in the second edition. So this is the original poem that he wrote, Earth. There's it there.
Wow. Oh, look at
See?
that. In his handwriting.
That's handwriting. So that's the first time he ever wrote that poem. And
Okay.
so, that's that one. And then, of course, this is his collected poems. And this is signed by him as well. Somewhere.
Oh, wow. So
So
that's
those are,
amazing that you have a
yeah.
signed copy by him. Oh, wow.
Well, that's this. This is his AE. You can see AE there. It's the same. See?
Oh, look. Oh.
Mhm.
And he's got
That,
the triangle, has he? What's
no,
that?
that's A. It says AE.
Yes, but above it, he's got. Oh, yes, right. Yeah, but it's done in like a triangle, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
That is
yeah. So,
interesting.
those,
Yeah.
and some of his art. I wonder can we get you some like those are beautiful wee sketches you can see there. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
And
mm.
this is from this book as well, is it, Jim?
No, it's from this book here. It's some of the art that's in Armagh Museum, and you can see the beautiful.
Right.
You can that would be a water being there, I think. You can see
Mm.
yeah. And of course, you know, in Ely
Jim,
Place,
Jim,
yeah,
have you a list of books that are published by AE, and I could probably put it up in the group, a list of the books that he has published that are
yeah, we can
published.
get that. And you know
Yeah.
the album, you've heard of the album A Woman's Heart,
Yes.
right? Well, that's the cover of A Woman's Heart. So
Oh,
AE,
yes, that's right.
yeah. So
So it was AE's art. Yeah.
AE's art, both of them. There was two albums, Woman's Heart, and both of them are AE's. You know, so and this is a Deirdre at the Dun. You like this one? This is Deirdre at the Dun.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful. So he was a fabulous artist. Like you know, there's
Oh, yeah, he was incredible. Absolutely.
you know, so these were the kind of
Right.
things that he was seeing all the time. You know, and he produced them in art and poetry. His mysticism is in his art and his poetry. So
Oh,
we like to
definitely.
yep. So we like to put both things on in the exhibition. You know, so. But
Yes.
once you get into AE, we call it the old enchantment from that first poem there, Caramore. Um,
Paramore.
and he just gets you. Once he gets you, and you're
Oh,
in
he does, yeah.
there,
He's got me. Honestly, he's
it's
got
so
me. Yeah.
beautiful. And all the people that we meet that like AE are beautiful people as well. They have beautiful souls. They're very kind, very nice. And you know, I've never heard anyone that would do anything behind your back or anything like that. You know, they're just
No,
very kind people. You know, so
we are.
I hope you enjoyed it. And as I say,
I
we'll
did.
try and give you a list of his books, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah.
And perhaps we'll do
Yeah,
more
if
on
you can
it.
give me a
Yeah,
list of the books that he published, and I might write, I might write a blog actually about your society, and if you look, we'll talk tomorrow, and I'll
yeah.
get the list of books to you and anything else I need to put in the blog. because I put this video on now on with the blog, so
Oh,
it
you
would
would
be
have,
brilliant.
yeah, because I'd like to watch it back myself.
Jim, it was lovely talking to you, and thanks to all the members that joined tonight and actually stayed. Thanks so much for joining us. And look, we'll have another live feed. I don't know what about.
Yeah.
Maybe you could give me some suggestions as to what you'd like to discuss next. But
Yeah.
anyway, Jim, in the meantime, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And thank you so much for joining me
Okay.
tonight.
I'm glad it
And
worked
I've learned.
in the end because I was getting, every time I hit the accept button, it seemed to die for some reason, but I'm not
I
sure.
know. Oh,
Mm,
sugar
yeah,
pesky Faye, don't worry about it.
yeah,
We got there
maybe,
eventually.
yeah, maybe A's humility didn't want us, to
I know,
close the
and
wall.
patience,
Yeah,
patience.
patience.
Anyway,
Yeah.
thanks everyone for joining in tonight, and see you all tomorrow. Jim, thank you so much. I appreciate
Good
it.
luck.
Night, night.
Okay. Yeah, see you.
Night, everyone. Take care.